Good morning and welcome this week to the Scots in Us, and a wonderful moment for us to catch up with Garry MacLean. He's Scotland's national chef and our international ambassador for Scotland's food, because he's never stops traveling at the moment. And on top of also leading the program of education of culinary education over at the City of Glasgow College. So, Garry, good morning.
Morning, how are you, Camilla? Nice to see you.
I'm not too bad. At least it stopped raining here. We've been very damp for a few days.
Yeah. Last time I seen you, I think we were just waiting for a hurricane to come.
Oh, exactly. That was wonderful. So, Garry, before we talk about your fantastic new book, can we set the scene as to how your career began? What has inspired you onto this journey as this incredible chef of Scotland?
Yeah, so I've been a chef since 1987. I knew I was going to be a chef from the age of 12. As soon as I found out there was a job that you could be a chef. Again, my story is probably very similar to a lot of chefs out there. Very disengaged at school, and I was lucky to find food. I was probably the worst student in every subject, with the exception of home economics, and from being the worst at everything to being the best in the class was quite an amazing feeling. And I had a really good teacher in school, and she kind of encouraged and sort of advised me that I could maybe make a good chef. And again, back then, there was no real sort of chefs on TV. There was no role models or anything. So there was, I didn't know you could get paid to cook. And as soon as I found that out, I knew what I was going to do.
But also your wife is a wonderful cook, you say, a wonderful chef.
Yeah. We met at college when we were 17. We were kind of almost high school sweethearts. So we met in the same class at college. So, and then we've had 5 kids. So you could say that kind of food is, that decision to follow food has completely taken over my life in every way.
But teaching and mentoring is important to you too, and educating people about healthy eating within the menu of Scotland. And that really comes across in this wonderful new book that's just come out and is available here, The Scottish Kitchen.
Yeah. Again, I found, just going back to my school days, which I didn't enjoy. And then I pretty much went straight to college after leaving school. And I loved it. I absolutely embraced education. And I think it was just because it was a subject that I really enjoyed. And I've never really left, so I did 8 years at college part-time, twilight classes they were called. So it was 2 nights a week for 8 years. And I think I had a year not being at college, and then I was invited back to cover a class on a Wednesday. It was a Wednesday class I was asked to cover because someone's at the dentist or something. And I'd never felt so proud in my life that I was back teaching. And I actually covered that class for 13 years. So for 13 years, I was there every Wednesday. So it was always my day off, and whatever job I had, I needed Wednesday off to teach. So, and I've never really left. 2010, I went full time teaching.
And also
and
you
then
come over here
roles.
And you do these fantastic demonstrations. I mean, even in the middle of a hurricane happening and everything else being cancelled, you were leading the charge at the New Hampshire Highland Games yet again. And those demonstrations are sold out.
Yeah, they're really, 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 really busy. And I think the New Hampshire Games was the first time I'd actually demonstrated to an American audience, a big American audience. And I just couldn't believe the passion that people had. But the first time I did the Games, I went over to teach people to cook. I went over to teach people how to cook at home very, very easily. So I had a real mixture of different dishes. And there was a bit of Scottish in there, there was a bit of Italian, there was a bit of Indian. And everyone in the audience was more Scottish than me, and I felt kind of guilty that I was doing non-Scottish food, and my book out at the time was a non-Scottish book, but people kept buying it in the States thinking it was Scottish, so I kind of felt obliged even to write a book about Scottish food. And the more I researched it, the more I realised that there was a massive gap in the market for a modern take on Scotland's traditional food and a modern cookbook that
Well,
offered.
your first book has been a complete sellout. There's no copies to be found anywhere.
Yeah.
And so the Scottish Kitchen is just a fabulous continuation. And really, the photography is beautiful of Scotland within the book, but also of the food. And taking a modern take on the palate and the food is this wonderful veggie and vegan section you put in.
Yeah. I mean, traditionally, if you look at Scotland's sort of traditional food, we were meat and fish eaters, and with the sides of the kind of potato dishes, there's not a lot we can reference, in terms of a fruit and veg. But when I did a lot of research in how we used to eat, Glasgow and Edinburgh had numerous fruit and vegetable markets, and they had great produce, and that got me thinking about, how do we incorporate that style of food? How do we incorporate that kind of ethos into the book? And I was working with a community garden in the East End of Glasgow, and this is a garden that's primarily they've taken over the drying area of an old wash house, so a kind of Victorian wash house. They've turned the drying area into a garden where they grow fruit and vegetables, and it's to bring people together. It's for mental health. It's for making friends and things like that. And then the food that comes out the ground is a kind of bonus. So I had been doing quite a lot of stuff there, and I couldn't believe the quality and standard of the stuff that was coming out that ground every day. And I decided to kind of write that whole recipe around what came out the ground that day. That was doing that week that was doing the veggie stuff for the book. So a lot of the ethos of it is homegrown, fresh fruit and veg, and just making the best food ever. And it's actually one of my favorite chapters in the book.
Everything is delicious. I mean, the roasted carrot, shallot and beets, could not look more beautiful and appetizing to eat. And I also like the mushroom, potato, and lentil salad, and the one with the blueberries, the blackberries is gorgeous too. Broccoli, blue cheese, and blackberries. Just such a lovely combination. So you've been, and also there's some great desserts in there. It's a very good, well-rounded recipe, cookbook that doesn't intimidate me. I feel like I could have a go.
Yeah, that stems back to my ethos that people should be cooking at home. And again, when I write a recipe, I think to myself, would I want to do this at home? Would I want to find the ingredients, spend the time? So it's getting that balance and making sure that the effort that goes into making a plate of food is worth it when it comes to the end. And I know people are time short, and I'm always very conscious of that. But that's where traditional food is a winner, because our ancestors, our grandparents and great-grandparents and so on, didn't have the time for food either, but they had no option, but they had to cook. So food was always really simple, and a lot of our traditional recipes in Scotland are based on 4 or 5 ingredients. And this is something that you're now seeing that in a lot of cookbooks, the 5-ingredient cookbook and thing, but that's how our ancestors cooked. They didn't have the access to, Korean chili paste and soy sauce and, pickled walnuts. They were cooking with what was available at the time. And that's what I kind of think we should be getting back to a little bit.
You do have a good big section on haggis.
Yes.
Do you think that's I like haggis. I really do. And I find it very tasty. But you have a really great section of imaginative recipes.
Yeah. Again, most people think, particularly in the States, that haggis is a dish, you know, like oxtail soup or something like that. But haggis is actually an ingredient that can be used in lots and lots of different things. And in Scotland, we do use it as an ingredient to make everything from pakora to burgers to koftas to samosas or a whole host of different things.
Well, I really like the haggis from the Caledonia kitchen, which is very easy for us to get.
Yeah.
And they have beef, lamb, and they have a vegetarian.
Yeah.
So that would
Yeah,
work
I have
for
tried
these.
it. Definitely. Yeah,
All
definitely.
right, so we can.
There is also a recipe there to make your own haggis, and there's an American recipe that excludes the lung. So lung's the kind of major one of the major ingredients for haggis. And what I find with a lot of North American haggis, that they substitute the lung with liver. But lungs don't taste of anything. You know, they don't have a distinctive gamey or awfully flavour. So it's used there as a kind of binder and a filler. And what I've done is suggested a couple of different things that you could add to that. You know, I think ground chicken or ground pork that you could put in just to bring it together a little bit, and you get a more authentic kind of Scottish style haggis.
But there's also some great stews in here for people to have a go at.
Yeah, and again, perfect for this lovely autumnal weather that we're experiencing just now. There's nothing better. And again, I love one pot food. I really do, especially at home. You know, you get everything in there, and I actually braise everything in the oven. So if I'm making even simple things, you know, like a beef stew or a shepherd's pie filling or indeed a bolognese or a ragu, I cook it in the oven, and it just keeps everything the same temperature.
Together.
Yeah, and it means you don't have to stir it or look after it as well.
And you have the simplest thing but the best, shepherd's pie.
Love it. It's a great picture as well. Every time I look at it, I think to myself, I need to make a shepherd's pie.
I know, it's fabulous.
And I remember that actual shepherd's pie we made. It was and when I do all the photography at home. The photographer kind of moves in for a couple of weeks and you get everything done. With this room here gets turned into a studio, and what happens is you have masses of food, you know, and you need to get it out the door. You don't want to get wasted. And all my neighbours become chief testers of the food. And it's funny when they get a copy of the book when it came out, and they're flicking through and going, I tasted that, I tasted that, I tasted that. But a lot of people still talk about the shepherd's pie, and there's a gin and berry tart in there that the neighbours are still talking about. So it's actually on the back cover.
Are you going to let me have a look at that? Oh yes, there it is. Gorgeous. Yeah. So are you going to do some demonstrations again? Because during COVID, we used to join you in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Are you going to have time to do maybe some of those again?
I don't know. Everybody keeps asking, and it's funny, particularly when I travel to New York and New Hampshire. People come up to you and go, they totally loved the demonstrations and they missed them and things like that. I mean, it's probably 2 years since I've done anything like that, but I don't know. Are people still on Facebook? I don't know. But
so I think they've returned to Facebook a bit at the moment.
I suppose, yeah. It may be something I could look at over the winter when people are at home and looking for something to do.
Well, you see, with the time difference, you could fill your evenings that aren't that busy, we're sure.
No. Five kids and some restaurants and full-time jobs.
I know. Well, listen, Garry, see you in a few weeks. I know you're traveling back over this way, which is fantastic. Yeah. And your book is available now, that people can go to Amazon or to the different booksellers to order a copy of The Scottish Kitchen, which is now available through publishers and distributors here, which is fantastic.
Yes, yeah.
Well done.
It's a North American book, so people will be able to pick it up in the local bookstore, Amazon, both US and Canada, and Barnes and Noble and all other great bookstores. the book is very American friendly without losing the Scottish touch.
Well, what I'm going to ask you to do in the next few weeks is sort of maybe pinpoint a recipe of the month that we can put into our bulletins,
Yeah, of
to
course.
spotlight, because I think that would be rather fun and inspiring, because they really are some great things. So thank you very much, and to speaking again shortly.
No, looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
And so let's continue our conversation today by joining Iona Crawford. She heads up all the marketing that's been happening internationally on the wonderful Harris Distillery. We've first been meeting Iona the last few months as she's journeyed over here to tell us more about the great gin, Harris Gin. But today we're going to learn about the first launch of their whiskey, the Horak. I said that completely wrong. Iona, hello.
Hello, Camilla. Thank you so much for having me on today.
So let's talk a little bit about the journey of the Harris Distillery first. Simon Erlanger came across about 10 years ago now to tell us he had this vision for a distillery on Harris, and it's happened. And now the gin is great, it's winning wonderful accolades around the world, and now the whiskey is ready.
Yes, that's right. So, and that's what's been so lovely to speak to you, because the American Scottish Foundation, as you say, have had that connection right before the distillery was even a building, just right in the early days when it was an idea. And now, all these years on, it's playing out. So yeah, just to take it back to the story of the Isle of Harris Distillery. So the Isle of Harris, as you know, Camilla, is a very small remote island in the Outer Hebrides in Scotland. It is home to under 2,000 people. And the reason that I always tell people the size of the island in terms of population is because this was the reason that the distillery was founded. So our founder, who is a man called Anderson Bakewell, or Burr, as we more fondly know him as, Burr has been traveling, and Burr is actually, I should mention, he is British American. So he grew up in the States, and he came over to the Isle of Harris when he was in college as a young man, and just completely fell in love with the place. Just found a real sense of belonging on the island, loved the community, the landscape, everything about it. And for years and years and years, up until the present day, he has been coming back to spend time there with his family. And over these years, he noticed that there was a huge decline in the population.
Yeah.
And he understood from the local people it was because there wasn't sustainable employment. There wasn't enough jobs or career opportunities to allow people to stay or for people to move there. So Burr had this fantastic idea that he would love there to be a distillery, because a distillery would provide a variety of job opportunities, ranging from distillers to canteen staff to tour guides to administration to everything you can imagine. And this would be a way to provide a source of employment on the island, but also act as a catalyst for growth for other businesses on the remote island of Harris.
But you've now got 45 people working for you. So he must be so excited to and proud that this vision he had has actually come to fruition and is growing.
Absolutely, it's incredible. We started off, as you mentioned, Simon Erlanger there, our managing director. So it started off with Bert, Simon, and our CFO, Ron McKirkin, and the three of them who kind of made this vision come to life. And they started with just 10 members of staff, 10 local people from the Isle of Harris that they'll admit themselves had no idea about distilling or anything. And they were completely trained up by the experts in the field. And run, of course, the whole production by themselves. And we're very lucky that we've got a few, we call them wise men, a few consultants and people that have helped us along the way. But as you mentioned, now we have over 40. I think we're actually at the 50 mark members of staff now, which is amazing. So we're proud that we're the largest independent employer on the island of Harris. And as you say, keeping growing. You know, we're a global business now, which is such an amazing achievement in the last 8 years.
But it also, what I love about the gin, and you'll have to tell us how you've incorporated this into the whiskey. The gin makes you feel you're on the island. The bottle is this beautiful, swirling, blue-hued bottle that makes you think of the sea and the waves there. And the botanicals you use and the kelp is all very much the island, which comes through. The whiskey bottle I saw a few months ago that you were using had very much that same of the earth feel. Can you talk about how you put all that together to bring the island through?
Yes, and I think it's lovely you pick up on that, because that's so important to us at the distillery. And that was part of the vision, as well as, you know, being there for the island and its people. The idea was also to create, you know, unique, beautiful spirits that would represent the Isle of Harris through their look of their bottle, through the taste of the gin and now the whiskey. So wherever you are in the world, if you see the Isle of Harris gin or you see the Heroc, hopefully it gives a really good representation of a beautiful, beautiful island and part of the world Harris is in.
So the whiskey, it launched like the last few days, didn't it?
Yes, it's very exciting. That's probably why I look a bit tired, because I've just come back from the distillery. We launched the Heroc, our first single malt whiskey, and the first whiskey from the island of Harris. So it's very, very special. We launched it officially on Friday, the 22nd of September. And we had a big party at the distillery to celebrate, a big ceilidh. And then on Saturday, it went on sale at the distillery for the first time. And it was just amazing, because we had people queuing overnight. We had thousands of people on our website. We've actually sold out of our UK website allocation. So our online stock is all sold out within 4 hours. Which is just unbelievable. We were so
4 hours?
humbled. 4 hours. 4 hours. So it's been, you know, it's been hugely anticipated. We know loads of people have been excited, but we were truly overwhelmed by the reaction at the weekend, both at the distillery and online. And now,
are there any bottles left for us here?
There is, don't worry. So our online UK allocation is sold out. We still have bottles at the distillery, although we had over 1,000 people there at the weekend. But all our international markets around the world, so including the US, we have shipped off stock too. So I'm pleased to say that the Heroc has officially arrived in the US. It's arrived with our importer, and we can expect to see it on the shelves in the next couple of weeks. So it's really exciting.
Now, when will your next, casks be ready to be bottled?
Yes, so that's a good point, because this is all the first release. So very special, because it's the first release. And of course, there'll only ever be one first release. So it's a bit more limited, and of course in demand, which is great. And then it'll be next year. We'll be looking towards spring next year before our second release is out. So hopefully there'll be enough bottles in the US to tie everyone over until next year. But we're really excited for our retail partners out there to get their stock.
Now, you mentioned to me when we were talking beforehand that the bottles do not carry a year on them. So how will people know if they've got one of these prized first
Yes,
edition, for want of
release.
a better
Yes,
word?
yeah. So at the bottle design on the top of the bottle, where the cork is, there's a wee hand put on label, and it will say first release. So
Right.
you'll know it's the first release. There is no age on the whiskey. It is a non-age statement whiskey. And that is because the recipe that makes up the Heroc is taken from casks of slightly different ages. So it wouldn't be fair just to call it one age.
No.
But yes, it's been, what I can tell you is the distillery is now just had its 8th birthday, and we have been waiting almost all that time. Well, we have been waiting all that time. The first few casks were filled not long after we opened. So it's a fantastic brand that's in that bottle.
So when you so you can help us get our pent up desires going, how would you describe the whiskey? Does what are the casks that you've been letting it mature in?
Yeah.
So we understand, is it peaty, or are we staying with a lighter earth feel?
Yeah. So we are saying it's lightly peated. So it's 12 to 15 parts per million. In terms of casks, we use American bourbon casks. So we
Ooh.
have Buffalo Trace and Heaven Hill in this first release. And we also have Spanish wood casks. So we have Pinot and Oloroso. So there are the 4 types of casks that the spirit has been maturing in. And then something else that we do is that we marry our whiskey. So once it's all put together and ready, we then put it into an ex-sherry bud for a further minimum of 12 weeks of marrying, just to really mellow the spirit out and round it off and give it that lovely, lovely finish. And we're excited for you and everyone to try it, because we think it's really something special, and the people that had it at the weekend in Harris certainly loved it. So excited to see what the US market think of it.
Well, I can't wait. And I know that there's such demand. I cannot believe in 4 hours, the British allocation was gone. My goodness, pent up demand for the spring, for the second release. Amazing. So Iona, thank you for joining today. You have got us all really, really pent up now for the whiskey, which is available like the gin in about 33 states at this point.
Yeah, so the gin is available at the moment, yes, in about 30 states. The whiskey will start off in about 12, and then we will grow the distribution for it. But we do have a dedicated page on our website. So www.harrisdistillery.com/USA. And on that page, we have a stockist map, so people can search using their zip code to see their nearest retailers for the gin and very soon the Heroc whiskey.
That's
so
wonderful. So
very excited.
looking forward to seeing you soon and tasting the new whiskey, the Heroc.
Absolutely.
And we will speak to you very shortly. Thank you very much, Iona. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on, and we're very excited to share the Heroc with you.